Hi guys, White Warlock here. This is gonna be another deck guide video on the green steel discard list. And in this video, I will play out some mulligans the first few turns, and I will actually show what I would mulligan in those situations. The deck is completely random, and yeah, we'll see what kind of hands we get. Obviously, with green steel Bucky, sometimes you just discard a lot of cards or your whole hand. So I will move through the first few turns as well, especially if we don't have a Bucky to see what your opponent like what would do, especially what you would do when your opponent does other some specific things. Um, this deck is a lot more reactive than like the red blue item list in the first few turns versus what that list is. Like that list would just set up for the first 5 6 turns, and for us it's after turn three we already look at what our opponent is doing. Like turn one and turn two is obviously always play a one drop and turn two play Bucky. Um, but yeah, after turn three it becomes a lot different. So let's go and let's see what our first hand will be. So we have a Diablo, we have a Robin Hood, we have a small Robin Hood, we have a Bucky, uh, we have a Diablo, and a Hidden Cove. Okay, so first, before always mulliganing, I would always see like what would my turns be. So I have a inkable here, so I would ink the Hidden Cove, play Robin Hood. Let's say I draw an inkable, I would have to ink the Robin Hood and play a Bucky. And then if I draw another inkable, we just lose because we don't have a shift or anything else. So you have to think about that. So we have a lot of inkables. We have three inkables, so that's maybe a little bit um, interesting. Um, and what we also look at is like what our early game plays will be. Well, okay, we have the shift and Bucky route. We have a Diablo on let's say turn four. Um, or even you could even do it on turn three and play the Diablo shift on turn four. That kind of depends on what you're playing against. In this version, in this hand, I don't really see when we have time to play the Prince John. This is a situation where you would where you would mull away the Prince John to look for inks. And I would probably also mull away this Let the Stormer John looking for an additional ink, so maybe we can keep the Cove. But the Cove might just stay in our hand for uh, like to be inked, and but it might stay in our hand, and we might play it on turn four, turn five. So I'm mulliganing the Storm Rage on and Prince John here, looking for inkables or other playables. So we get a 3 cost Ursula and a 4 cost the Duck. So now we have multiple flop points as well. So that's good for the Diablo. So let me shuffle, and while you're shuffling, uh, already start thinking about what your first place will be. So right now we don't have any songs in our hand, and we have like our turn three and turn fours are already pretty like obvious. So Ursula Deceiver all seems like the best ink on turn one. But you could also decide to ink the Hidden Cove, although you could always play the Hidden Cove if you know what you're like if it's really good in that certain matchup, or you could ink it on turn two. I would probably keep the ink, Hidden Cove first and then see. But obviously, if you're on the draw here, and if you draw a song you want to sing with Ursula, then you might want to keep the song. Might want to keep the Ursula in your hand and ink the Hidden Cove. All right. Right, so we shuffle. So yeah, I would ink the Ursula here and then play the Robin Hood. Then on turn two, we draw a Robin Hood. All right, so this is a pretty easy ink, right? Keep that over the cove, ink that over the cove, and then play our Bucky on turn three. Draw, and now we get a strength. So now it really depends on what we're playing against, right? If we are playing against a deck where we kind of want to kill one of the characters, but let's say we play against the Mirror and they played a turn to Diablo because they shifted turn to Diablo because they saw this, and then we had to like discard Robin Hood or discard the Cove probably, and then draw this. Then we would want to kill the Diablo as soon as possible, which we can do by inking the Donald Duck, shifting Robin Hood and singing Strength to kill the Diablo. That would leave us with one card in hand, which is very dangerous in the mirror. But that's the only way we can deal with their Diablo, and hope this stays in our hands so we can play our Diablo ourselves. But yeah, that's kind of dangerous being on the draw against the mirror, obviously. Um, Against other decks, the strength here does nothing because it's only good against them if we have a Ursula where they play like a blue-red where you don't really have anything to kill except for a Hiram, but you can't kill a Hiram with only 3 or 4 characters on board. So against other decks, it would be Ink strength here, especially also against red-blue. Hidden Cove is really important because you can get Diablo out of Brawl range and Robin Hood out of Medusa range. So in this situation, like in that situation, you would ink the strength, shift Robin Hood, force them to discard a card, and then quest with Robin Hood. And in other situations, you want to play the Diablo, but I'm just playing the shift here to let them discard at least one card now. Right. So we draw a Storm Mage on. In this situation, most of the time I would probably sing the Storm Mage on here. Um, let's see what ink will we get. I would basically always play the Diablo here, right? For 3, and like discard a card. Maybe then, yeah, well, you would probably first play the Diablo, let them discard, then sing the Storm Mage on to draw. Right, we draw strength. Then you probably ink the strength, and you play the Hidden Cove out already. Sometimes you don't want to do this, like if they have a Maui turn, but you also have an exerted Robin Hood. So if they decide to go for the Cove instead of the Robin Hood, then that's okay. I would say that's a reasonable turn, and after that we can decide what we do later. So this would be like my turn 4, and then we will untap and draw for our turn 5, and we get an Aladdin. So in this situation, Donald Duck is really nice. We have the Floodborns to start discarding cards. We will draw another card for Diablo. So right now we could play the Donald Duck. We could ink the Aladdin, have 0 cards in hand, and probably then probably put the Diablo in the Cove or the Robin Hood. It kind of depends on what you're playing against. If you're playing against red blue, you might want to put the um, Robin Hood at this point in the game. You probably want to put the Robin Hood in the Cove so that it doesn't die from a Maui attack or from Medusa, and because Diablo will die to Medusa anyways if it's in the Cove, and Brawl was probably already played at this point, right? So against those decks you want the Robin Hood in the Cove. Against other decks you want Diablo in the Cove. Like maybe red purple, you would rather run Diablo in the Cove. So let's just put Diablo in the Cove, quest for 3, and then on their turn we draw at least one card. Let's just keep it at 1 for now, and then we untap. So on our turn, we first draw a card from Donald Duck and let them draw a card. Then we draw a card for our turn. See, we draw a beast here. Although we would love to play both John and the beast, we don't have the room for that. So right now we play the beast, and a second cove is not really necessary. So I would ink the cove here, and then definitely put the beast in the cove, not the Ribbon Hood. Um, and then start questing. And after that, you basically already win. You're probably already winning if Diablo stays alive for that long. Um, yeah, this is a pretty good hand, right? Right, I'll shuffle up and I'll go to the second hand. All right, so our second hand is Diablo, Aladdin, Cove, Sun and Chill, Ursula, Robin Hood, and Beast. All right, so no Bucky, so we want to mulligan a lot of cards here. Um, Sometimes I would really like something like this, like to keep this, but it's very risky to mulligan 4 instead of 6 for the Bucky. The chance that you get a Bucky is much higher if you mulligan 6 than you mulligan 4. Even though like a hand like this plus and then getting a Bucky is insane. Like especially if you get a Bucky and a Diablo. But I would probably mill 6 here. You could decide to keep the Robin Hood as well, but I'm most of the time I like to keep at like either the one drop or the Diablo. Like one drop Robin Hood or the Diablo and not both the Robin Hood and the Diablo, because Robin Hood is not really useful if you have the Diablo anyways. It's okay to sometimes it's okay to skip turn one, especially if you're not shifting anyway. So I'm Mulligan D6 away, and we'll get back a Strength, a Robin Hood, a Diablo, a Flynn, Ursula, and Prince John. So we do not get a Bucky. Right, so let's shuffle these. And we already have to decide, okay, what the hell, how are we winning this game? So how are we winning this game? Well, I would say we draw cards with Diablo. Um, and we want to like hopefully we get discard cards so that at least Prince John draws a lot of extra cards, and then maybe we get a later game Bucky or something, um, or at least like get a lot of value out of our turn two Diablo. Like situations like these are when you turn to Diablo, especially against matchups where they play like songs to kill your Diablo, and you can play the turn to Ursula Deceiver. All right, so in this situation, Robin Hood doesn't really do anything, and the other cards are better to keep for now. So we ink the Robin Hood and play the Diablo, and then we can look at our opponent's hand. We can use that information to see what we want to play on. If we want to shift the Diablo on turn two, if we can afford that, and else if we can get something good with Ursula. Sometimes you want to get something with Ursula, especially if you're not playing against a red deck. Then playing turn to Ursula is okay, and especially now with no other turn to play, except for shaking the Diablo, it might be okay, unless obviously we don't get another inkable. All right, well we get the Bucky, so that's really good. Um, yeah, that makes our hand so much better. Right now we just ink the Ursula and play the Bucky, and we wait. So next turn we can play Prince John and Diablo, and hopefully draw another hopefully draw an inkable. So we have the strength, or either an inkable or another saw action, so we can shift the Diablo and play the Prince John. Makes our hand much better. All right. So we draw a Robin Hood, great inkable. Alright, so we ink the Robin Hood, we play the Prince John, and then we shift Diablo, discard Strength. They have to discard a card. We draw a card from Prince John, we draw a Donald Duck, and then we quest with the Diablo, and then in their draw step, we draw another card, and then let's see. Alright, then on our turn, we draw a card. Alright, so, this is interesting. Uh, with this, like with having Donald Duck and a Prince John, like with having a Prince John and this situations, Donald Duck is actually really good. However, in this situation, we obviously have no other inkables. So right now, I would see if your opponent has a target for that Stormy John, doesn't matter what it is, even if it's like a mini 1/3 for one, you're probably seeing that Stormy John try to draw a better inkable. So we'll do that. All right, we get an Ursula. Ursula is a better inkable, I would say, than Donald Duck is. Um, like, yeah, we're playing the Donald Duck now. We're forcing them to discard another card, and so we can draw another card for Prince John. So we draw another Bucky, and then in their draw step, we draw another card, and we get a sudden chill. So now it's unfortunate that we we inked the Ursula and can't play it, but it's still really okay. And then now it's our turn. So we draw a card from Donald Duck, and then a card for our turn, and then if our opponent draws a card, that's pretty good because they probably have like only a few cards remaining in their deck, in their hand, and right now we can like ink the uh, Cove. You could maybe even ink the Bucky here, um, but let's say like you can like if they're not playing Steel, what you could do is you could play Bucky. Uh, you could play another Prince John, and then like Diablo can sing Sudden Chill, so they discard a card and you draw two cards. Um, what or you could also play the Flynn if they have two cards in their hand. You could also decide to just play the Flynn and sing the Sun and Chill, so they discard their two cards in their hand. You draw two cards, and then it's basically over. But normally, I would probably play the second Bucky and the second Prince John, and then sing Diablo. They have to discard a card. We draw two cards from the Sun and Chill, and yeah, then it's basically over. Because the second, like if the Prince Johnson the Bucky survives, every single Floodborn we play is they discard two cards, we draw two cards, and if the if the Donduck stays alive, they can't really draw anything because if they draw one card, we get two cards back from that discard because we will always be able to discard a card. So yeah, this is um, a really good turn, like few turns. I would say this is probably the best that this deck can do. Uh, and yeah, we're really lucky by drawing the Bucky. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what the deck does sometimes. Sometimes you just high roll and you just win. And if we didn't have Bucky there, we might have probably lost. We would have probably lost that game. Depending on our opponent, obviously, if it's a really good matchup, anyways, then sometimes you just win anyways. All right, I'll prepare the third hand. I'll shuffle up and I'll prepare the third hand. Be right. All right, another hand. Let's see. Okay, 7. Let's see if we get a Bucky this time or if we have to mulligan again. Nope, we get a Bucky. We have a Strength, a Robin Hood, a Bucky, a Beast, a Zeus, Aladdin. Oh, look. Okay, so we have like a turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5 play with an Inkable and a removal spell. The Zeus is obviously mulligan here. But I think I would probably also mulligan the strength here because it doesn't really do anything for us, and we might want to try to find the Diablo. But like a curve like this is just really good. Like even if we don't have a shift, Roman would just okay as one drop, and then we have a shift, like three shifts. We just discard their hand. They're all inkable, so if we draw an inkables now, we could maybe ink one of them. Let's say the beast, and we just have a really good curve here. So I would keep these 5 and mill away these 2, and let's see what we get. We get a cove and another Bucky. All right, that's pretty good. So right now when I look at this deck, like this hand, like what can we do? It really depends on what deck we're playing against. If we have the opportunity, if they're playing like a slower deck and we have the opportunity to play the Bucky on turn 3 and then like ink the Aladdin and then play the Donald Duck on turn 4, then discarding 2 cards and then play the Beast and discarding more cards, then um, that will be good. Otherwise, we might have to ink it. But I think double Bucky is really good, especially with Donald Duck. Just like um, neuters that downside for Donald Duck and basically makes it a beast, but then for 4. So right on the play, I would probably ink the Cove here, but you could also decide to ink Aladdin. It kind of depends. Maybe if you're blind, you want to see if you want to definitely want to play the Aladdin on turn 2. Like let's say you're playing against a Flynn deck. Sometimes you might want to, you might need to play the Aladdin on turn 3 instead of the Bucky, and then play the Bucky on a later stage. So I would probably ink a Cove here and play the Robin Hood. Right, draw. We get a Diablo, so this card is not useful anymore. So it's a good ink. We ink Diablo, play the Bucky. Draw for our third turn. Alright, so now we get a removal spell. Right now we don't really have the opportunity to play this, and we have our curves set right. But now this would be a time where you could decide to ink the Aladdin. But at this moment, like if this was a strength of like sorry, if this was a let the storm rage on, then you would ink the Aladdin here and keep it for later. But right now, I think we do want the second Bucky and then ink the strength and then keep these Floodborns just to play a few Floodborns and to play a few flopborns and discard basically 6 cards, right? These are 6 cards because we gave our because we didn't shift, we didn't play a flopborn on turn 3. We gave our opponent additional time to draw more cards. So playing the flopborns is nice. All right, we draw. Okay, we get a Diablo here. So I don't know. We have to think a little bit like what we want. I think we ink the Aladdin and play Diablo here. You could also decide to play the Donald Duck, but we can always use it for ink and play the Beast on turn 5 and then just not use the Donald Duck here. That's okay. But the Diablo here just offers a little bit more than the Donald Duck does. So we play Diablo and force him to discard 2 cards. Right, then for turn 5, we draw a card. We can Ursula. We don't have any songs in our hand. And right now I want to play the Beast and keep the Donald Duck as a flopborn. So I would ink the Ursula, play the Beast. They have to discard 2 cards. We quest with Diablo. We get a card on their draw step, and then we draw a card for our turn. We get a sudden chill. Okay, so now we can discard 3 cards. So we can for turn for 4, we can play Donald Duck. Oh, sorry, and we actually also get whoops. We also get an additional draw from the Beast. Okay, interesting. So in this situation, you could decide to play the Donald Duck or the Robin Hood. It depends on what their board state looks like. If the Robin Hood is very good against their deck, then you would play the Robin Hood. If you want to keep drawing more cards, you could. And if you expect the beast to die, you could play the Donald Duck instead. It kind of depends. At this point, probably doesn't really matter anymore. You've discarded a lot of cards from them already, so you probably just like let's say you play the Donald Duck, you discard 2 cards. Then with Diablo, you sing Sun and Chill, you let them discard 1 more card, and if let's say they only have 1 card on their in there on the battlefield, we and that's killable by storm. We storm that, and we draw another card, and then in this situation we could even play the Diablo anyways, because we don't need to ink past 5, especially in a hand like with this. Even though we do have Beast and Donald Duck, so it is a little bit better. Most of the time, you could just play it out here and just use it for additional lore threat. At this point, we just want to close out the game. We already have such a huge lead that we just want to close the game as soon as possible and don't want to allow our opponents to get back into the game. So yeah, this is another really good hand, and it just shows you the power of the green steel deck and the power of Bucky that yeah that a lot of decks just can't deal with in this meta, and the reason why it's gonna be changed. So I'll do one more hand. I'll shuffle up and yeah, we'll do one more hand, and then that will be the end of the video. All right, our last hand. Let's see what we get. So we get a Diablo, we get 2 Ursulas, we get a big Diablo, we get a Beast, we get a hand Ursula, and we get a Donald Duck. So no Bucky, and these are like the mulligans that are super easy. It's just keep the 2 Diablos and mulligan away the rest, and hopefully get a Bucky. And if you get a Bucky here, you have an insane hand, right? So let's see with 5. So Ursula, Donald Duck. Let's storage on the Robin Hood and another Diablo. Okay, so no Bucky, but double Diablos. That's interesting. Um, it might still be like a very good hand against a lot of decks, especially decks that can't deal with 2 Diablos. Most decks can deal with at least 1, but 2 at the same time is really hard, especially if they have to spend their time to draw it, right? So they can't kill it with their character. So yeah, yeah. Against Brawl decks, double Diablo is very dangerous, especially if you can shift one and play the other on the same turn, which we can do. So, alright, let's see what we'll do. Alright, so in this situation, the Robin Hood is ink here, we don't have to shift, and we have the turn 1 Diablo anyway, so we'll just ink the Robin Hood and play Diablo, so we see their hand, and then next turn we draw, get an Ursula. Okay, so at this point, we don't have a Bucky discard, so Donald Duck becomes a lot worse. We don't really want to give them extra cards if we already have double Diablo here. So what I would do is ink the Donald Duck and play the Ursula and take something from their hand. If you saw something you could take with the Diablo. If they didn't, you could also decide to ink the Ursula here and just keep the Donald Duck for now and do nothing. That's fine. We don't shift here unless you didn't see any removal. If you obviously if you didn't see any removal, you could always shift here. Otherwise, I would probably not shift here and wait. But it kind of depends because your turn three could always be just play Diablo and play an Ursula, right? So uh, it kind of depends on the matchup and what you saw in their hand. A very good thing would be here to shift uh, and draw, and then next turn play another Diablo and an Ursula. Even if they deal with this Diablo, that's okay. So let's just do that for now. So we shift and think here. If this wasn't let's say this was a beast or something, I would not do this. But just because this is an Ursula, you could. However, obviously because we don't have a song in our hand anymore, the Ursula's value has gone down drastically for us now. So it's a lot more risky. But we have no other two and two play if we didn't want to play the two cost Ursula. All right, so we'll draw a card from their draw step with the Diablo. We get another Diablo, all right, and then we draw for a turn. We get a hidden cove. So at this moment, um, huh, I think I want to ink the cove here and play another Diablo if our Diablo survived. That's pretty good. And then next turn we will see what we want to do with our third Diablo and our Ursula and our Duck. If our Diablo survive, we obviously quest here and draw another card on their draw step. So we get a 2-cost Ursula, and then draw a card for our draw step. We get a Strength. So now our Ursula becomes a lot better. Again, still no discard, so Donald Duck is almost always the ink here. And we want to keep this Ursula against red decks. For their be prepared in this situation. They'll most likely keep them in their hand, or because we can't discard it, right? So yeah, it's quite interesting there. Against some decks, you want to play the Ursula here, especially if you've drawn this strength now. Against other decks, you just want to play your third Diablo here and just say, good luck, man. Good luck dealing with my Diablos. You just Diablo tribal, man. We just quest for to draw two cards on their draw step, and then basically it's like over, right? Yeah, just draw too many cards. So you can still win these kind of games, right? Like the Diablo here, even without a Bucky, does a lot of things. But imagine if we had a Bucky here, right? Like we play turn two Bucky and then turn three shift Diablo, play Diablo. That would be insane. So yeah, they're definitely those are definitely the strong points of this hand um, and of this deck. So Ben Diablo, not Buggy. No, just kidding. Yeah, so those are basically the those are basically the play patterns and the mulligans I go through. Even without Bucky, you can still win, and sometimes you're just lucky and you draw the Bucky just when you need to, and you make your pretty meh hand into an insane hand because suddenly you have a lot of flop cards. I hope this video was helpful to you guys. If you have any other questions or like mulligan decisions, you could ask them down in the comments and I'll try to answer them. Um, I'm, although I'm not an expert in this deck at all, I feel like the play pattern, I can definitely go through the play patterns quite well, but sometimes I still make mistakes. And even in this video, you might notice one mistake I haven't thought about yet. So if you have any other comments like that, please put them in the comments, and so we can all learn from it, right? Um, I will play a lot of Pixelborn today, but when this video goes live, I'll probably already have played them. I've made like the last four videos at the same time, basically, but I'll release them uh, slowly after each other. So we'll see when exactly, but it might be likely that while this video is uploaded, I might be streaming Pixelborn Connect. So if I am, come join me on that, and if I'm not, I might be on in a later time. So come join me then to see me actually play the game live. I'll also make a few videos on them, and I'll obviously always upload the whole stream VOD on YouTube. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys later.